All right, Mono Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Good evening, Goenaand, Mensa, and welcome to another episode of Liberty and Friends. What I mean, another one, it's the first one for 2023. Goodness me, it's been a while since we've had this, the one long format show that I have on the BDL offering. With that being said, just bear with me, dear people. We are a bit behind schedule, and with that being said, a reminder to you that if you just joined us, hey man, do me a massive favor. Whether you're watching the simulcast on Facebook or on YouTube or Twitter, hit that like button. Do it now. Smash that like button and help us expand the audience that sees the show. If you're watching on YouTube in particular, then easy peasy. Subscribe to the channel. Hit that subscribe button and help me reach my goal of 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And with that being said, if you want to get in touch with us, hey man, find us on our website at bigdaddyliberty.com. That's actually going to become quite important, as in 2023, the plan, of course, is to hit the road again, to traverse this country, going Dorpi to Dorpi Township, rural area to rural area, talking to you, the ordinary faith, flag, family, and freedom type South African, on how we build a culture of liberty in South Africa, where the ideas that dominate our society are those of a liberty-leaning one, those broad South Africans who want a free, prosperous, non-racial, and property-owning South African, a far departure from the status quo as is defined by politicians and the political elite. So I'll be hitting the road, of course. The website, bigdaddyliberty.com, will give you information on where I'll be as I travel across the country, including, of course, how you can support the show financially with a monthly contribution. But more information on that in later, I don't know what word to fill in there. More information on that later. There we go. With that being said, enough of the jibber jabber, because tonight really is about the friends. Liberty and Friends is about the friends. They providing that hard-hitting analysis you will not get anywhere else. A broad spectrum of conservatives, libertarians, liberals, classical liberals, and even the odd anarchist. Shout out to you, Mpiaki Gamini. I haven't heard from him in quite a while, but that's the sort of broad ideas spectrum that you hear on the show, providing analysis on the news week that was. Now, with that mouthful out of the way, let me bring my friends panel for this evening on. The first one of the year. He is the head honcho over at the ManPatria podcast. Of course, you'll find them on their website. I'll let him share that particular website himself. I'm talking, of course, about Dumo Denga. Dumo, Baba, welcome.
Hi, Sihle. Thanks for inviting me on the show. I know it's the first one for the year. And yeah, I'm looking forward to having a great discussion.
Absolutely. I must just quickly say this to my viewers. Apologies if you're hearing I don't know what it will sound like to you, maybe a hissing noise or a sort of, static noise. I have the fan on, guys, in the bag. I cannot switch it off. It is so hot in Durban. It is insane right now. So forgive me if that is very noisy. I will mute my mic every now and then. We also are joined, of course, by Analyst, and indeed one half of the duo over at Two Crickets in a Thorn Tree podcast. He is an analyst at the Institute of Race Relations, Nicolas Lorimer. Nick, Baba, good evening.
How's it, Sihle? Good to be back.
Very good to have you on the show. Now, here's a face I know is a firm favorite on the show. It's been a while since he's been on. He's been very busy. Very hard to track him down last year, but I'm very happy that he's one of the first faces you'll see on Liberty and Friends this year. Columnist, writer, media guru, Kanthan Pillay. Baba, good evening. There he is. Hello.
Good to see you, Mfanakiti. How are you doing?
Baba, I'm very, very good. Good to see you, of course, and Mazel Tov on the new bundle of joy that has joined your family. I think, or am I crossing my wires here, Kanthan?
I think you're crossing your wires. So otherwise, you're giving away trade secrets. Either way, I didn't do it. Nobody saw me do it. You can't prove a thing.
Well, I was about to say, well, there you go. Let's just call 2023 then your new prime minister, just to save space here. Dear viewers, we will be joined by Nzuzo Kathi, also on the show. He's just clearing the last vestiges of load shedding, so everything has to reboot and yada, yada, yada. All of us know what that now means in this country. And unfortunately, Nolu Maki is unable to join us tonight. Shout out to her, man. It would have been nice to have her on the show. Guys, tonight's show, ordinarily, we unpack the news week that was. You guys provide the analysis, your views and inputs. We'll do a little bit of that. But with this also being the first show of the year, I really want us to forecast. Because effectively, I was a little bit clickbaity when it came to the title of tonight's show. And in fact, before I get into that, speak of the devil and he shall appear. Nzuzo Kathi, there he is. Nzuzo, Baba, good evening.
Good evening, Sihle. Good evening to your viewers. Apologize for being late, guys. I wish I could say that I was still watching the Arsenal and for Manchester United game, but it's actually load shedding is the reason why I'm late. So apologies for that.
Welcome to it. We definitely explained to our viewers what was going on, but we are very, very glad to have you on. As I said, this is the first Liberty and Friends for 2023. If you have just joined us, welcome to it. My name is Sihle Ngobes, a Big Daddy Liberty. As you can see, the house is packed. The Friends panel is right here. And as I was explaining, guys, with this being the first LNF of the year, I really want us to, ordinarily, yes, we look at the news week at once, but I want us to look forward into this year. Maybe based on some of the big ticket or big issue items from last year. What does 2023 hold for the average South African? Tonight's show won't be that long. Let's call it, we'll wrap up at around 9:10. But in that hour, in that power hour, if you will, I want South Africans to get a sense of where is South Africa headed. We can all feel there is a bit of a fork in the road, where there's one direction, which leads to that prosperity that, you know, non-racialism are speaking about, a property earning society, yada, yada, yada. And the other side of the forked road is the status quo, which is clearly down the precipice. Indeed, we've actually fallen off the edge and are tumbling at the moment. Things are sort of scattering as we tumble to our demise at the bottom. That was a very dramatic intro, but Kanthan, firstly, let's wrap up last year. Some of the big ticket items that we were taking into this year, things that maybe at the end of last year you were thinking about and wondering, do these continue in 2023? What's been on your radar?
Well, let's start off with the thing that almost everyone was speaking about when we got onto the show. And seriously, guys, I am quite embarrassed at my colleagues on the show right now for us to still be talking about load shedding. Okay, for the past 4 years, I've been telling people, get off the friggin' grid. Get off the grid. Here I am sitting in my home right now. I made a significant investment 3 years ago in terms of putting in solar and putting in battery backup and an 8.5 kilowatt inverter. And at the point at which people talk about load shedding, most of the time I don't have a clue what they are talking about. Now, for nearly every single one of us, there is no excuse for us to not be doing this in our individual capacities. All of us sitting around here right now. Okay, if you happen to be renting, for example, then go out and buy an inverter and batteries and just simply use it just as straight battery backup. I assume that every single one of us as South Africans has gone through the process of ripping out our old incandescent light bulbs and replacing them with extremely low wattage LED lights. We should not be having this conversation. We have the power to fix this stuff ourselves. There's going to be a 36% increase in the rates that Eskom is going to be charging our customers, which means all of us. And that immediately means that there's an excuse for us in our individual capacities to be going off grid. If you happen to be renting, then strike a deal with your landlord and say, either you're going to put in solar and you're going to add it to my rent bill, or I'm going to look for another place to live. Okay, if you happen to be living in your own place, then go to your bank and say, I want an extension on my bond. Give me an additional 100,000 and I'm going to go off grid with that. So this is a starting point. We have the ability to actually take control of our lives. The year of load shedding, 2022, we should not be talking about it in 2023. Please, can we use that as a starting point of empowering ourselves going forward? Sishle, what do you say?
No, absolutely. And let's actually unpack this, because I'm seeing the comments in the comment section. And just as a reminder, you, dear viewer, are very much a part of the show. So your comments will be flighted on the screen. So please keep them coming thick and fast, whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or on Twitter. Welcome to it. This is Liberty and Friends. But Kanthan is spot on, though, in saying, guys, this thing started in 2008. And maybe there was a honeymoon phase of sorts where we thought, the state will sort this out. Again, I'm playing devil's advocate here because I've never thought this, but nonetheless. Oh no, they said, no, the state will sort this out, especially because Eskom is the sole provider, right, of electricity. So it has nothing else to do except augment electricity supply. So don't worry, we have all the best CEOs, Brian Molefe, Koko then came in place, Andre de Ruyter, blah, blah. The politicians came in also as a revolving carousel. Zuma said, load shedding is a thing of the past. It's gone. Never, ever, ever, ever. I'll play that clip for those who maybe have forgotten it. Ramaphosa said the exact same thing. But we're in this boat. Surely now it turns to us, the ordinary citizen. Actually, maybe I should do something about this, even if it means a small battery pack. Dumo. A lot of the comments coming in saying, hang on, it's not that easy. Not everybody has these sort of options. Maybe even, what about the poor? Those who live in the informal settlements, they can't just buy these things.
Guys, are we capitalists, or are we people for individual liberty? Are we people for empowering ourselves? Or are we living in socialist central? What are we talking about here?
Hold that note, because I'll let you do more chew on that.
Right. That was actually one of the objections that I got on Twitter this week when I told people, get a generator, get solar, and so forth. And everyone was complaining about it being either too expensive or that, the generator's too loud. I mean, even where I stay, there's an industrial generator, and and my unit is very close to it. And yeah, it is loud, definitely so, but at least I can get some work done and so forth. And I have to just go back to what Kanthan was saying, and I think Kanthan is 110% correct, is that, you have to go speak to your communities. You have to speak, let's say if you're renting, speak to your landlord. And, 2 years ago, when lockdown actually occurred, where I stayed, the management there said, look, we're going to get generators because load shedding is going to get worse. And they got them. And, we pay a levy for it. And yes, industrial generators are expensive, but collectively, when we put money into it, we get these generators going. And that's the problem. I just think the mentality of many South Africans, and I'm not here to dunk on the audience. I know the audience are very liberty-minded people, but just South Africans in general, they always have this idea that there's going to be a savior. Eskom's going to get the CEO who's going to turn everything around, and we're all going to be great and so forth, because I think we're still hung up on the Nelson Mandela effect. And when I say Nelson Mandela effect, I'm not talking about the actual Mandela effect, which is some conspiracy theory stuff. I'm just talking about him being a hero and so forth and just setting everything right. We must just get out of that mentality, guys. And now we had a good spot. We're in a good spot in time because, number one, what's happening is that we have the opportunity to actually take our future into our own hands without actually going to the ballot box and putting an X there. It's about just talking to people and figuring out solutions. And then just one last point. It's a similar, there was this incident with regards to, I think it was Harrismith. And remember, they had a sewage problem there. Municipality was not doing anything. What did the guys do there? They said, no, we're going to go and we're going to fix this thing ourselves. And that's what we need to do, guys. Find people, come together, do what you need to do, and of course, do it within reason. Yeah.
Nick, I'm going to draw you in here because I think Dumo maybe raised an avenue which often we as South Africans are far too afraid of exploring, which is the idea of cooperation, voluntary cooperation. If you can't do something yourself, and let me be frank, I can't afford an inverter, I don't know what the units are. I think 8 kilowatt, this and that, blah, 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 blah. I can't afford those things. I can't afford solar panels. But what I can do is band together with my neighbor maybe even band together as a community. We all put some money into a community stock fair of sorts and maybe buy a community generator, something that just powers the lights with a bit of rejigging of community lights. I don't know. But the point is that first step of talking to neighbors, seeing what we can do together.
Yeah, I agree. Community solutions are really important right now because this is not going away anytime soon. And even if you do believe in the power of the state, I don't know why you would after everything we've been through over the past 10 years or so, but if you still did, even then it's going to take a very long time for the state to get things back on track. So I think that's exactly right when you say creativity is a really important thing here. Finding what we can do. And you can already see there's a lot of private institutions in the country, community organizations, that kind of stuff, where particularly when it comes to crime, which have been at least reasonably effective in dealing with some of the consequences of state failure when the state has failed in its most basic tasks, which is, of course, protecting property and life and lives. So, getting together with your neighbors, working out what you can do with your budget, anything you can to make the problem less. I will say, not everyone has the same, is in the same position, I think, financially, but the money I spent on a little inverter to power like my computer and router, I would eat rice and beans for many months if this thing blows up, because it is a lifesaver. It changes your world. It changes load shedding for you.
There's that little that ticket, that keyword, because often, and Kanthan, I'm going to come back to you because there's a comment here by Clay Wilson, just to expand your thoughts on the comment you made. But I think that last point that Nicolas made is critical. There are some things we as South Africans are not willing to sacrifice for, and far too many of us are then willing instead to bitch and moan about. Now, as I say this, I'm hoping no one is taking this personally. I'm not directing this at anybody who's watching, but a little bit of tough talk is warranted. Where, for instance, I'll make a prime example. There are some informal settlements here in my part of the world where they'll be the first to burn tires and protest and the like about one service or the other not being free or not being provided on time. Yet, when you go to these homes or when you speak to the local councillor, he often says, I'll find these people having high-end luxury goods, DSTV, for example, yada, yada, yada. Not to say that people shouldn't have those goods, but priorities is the key issue here. Kanthan, I'll come to you, Nzuzo, in a moment.
If I could start off with an anecdote, Sishla, and I just want people to think about this. I used to teach this to my trainees in all of the classes that I taught first at ETV and thereafter at YFM. And I would tell them that my father's generation, the last thing that they would do before they went to bed at night, and I would ask the question, what do you think they do before they go to bed at night? And, there'd be, people around the table would be saying, like whip out the condoms. Some people would say that they would pray. And I would say, no, my father's generation, they would polish their shoes. And why do they polish their shoes? Because their ability to go to work the following day and earn a living, which was going to put food on the table to ensure that the family was going to survive, depended on their being able to work. And in order to get to work, they needed a solid, reliable pair of shoes that was going to take them for the tens of kilometers that they would end up walking, inevitably, to end up getting to work and coming back every day. And taking care of your shoes was absolutely the most critical thing to do. Now, fast forward a generation from then. Today, the first thing that we need to do whenever we get our paychecks is to actually budget for fuel for the rest of the month in order for us to get to work, in order to be able to earn our money. These are very basic things. We first, before we consider anything in our lives that are questions of luxury, we need to look at what is it that makes possible the means of production. And people, right now, what makes possible the means of production is its lights and its connectivity. And it really is that simple. Now, if we are not prioritizing that in terms of our lives, it means that our kids are not going to be able to do their homework. It means that we're not going to be able to put food into the freezer which means that we're going to have to be buying on a daily basis, which means that our costs are going to go through the roof. So we have to take the hit up front. We say, in terms of what we are budgeting, I am going to take 5,000 Rand a month that I don't currently have. I am going to pay one of these companies that offers a rent-to-home solution in terms of solar and battery backup, and I'm going to invest in it. And really, that's just the mindset that we need to take, because this is not a luxury. This is not something that the government owes us. We need to take responsibility for ourselves. We are providing for our families, for future generations. We need to ensure, if my child cannot do homework because of the fact that there's no lights and there's no internet, I can't be blaming the government for that when she grows up and she is behind the curve. And so really, that's all I'm saying, Sishle. We need to have a complete adjustment. This is our generation's equivalent of my father's generation polishing their shoes.
No, absolutely. And I mean, I totally hear the reasoning. And Nzuzo, I want to come to you because I need to move us on. Yes, Nzuzo, even as I'm listening to this conversation, two things come out to me, and I think they need to be spoken of. There is a conversation, though, to be had around some of the poorest of the poor. Firstly, shifting them ideologically from believing that the state will save them, or the state will provide for them, to doing exactly what Kanthan suggests, actually, that no, part of it is actually us taking responsibility for ourselves and a little bit of personal accountability and doing things for ourselves. As I like to say, #Mazakele, build it yourself. I had a conversation this week, Nzuzo, with the AfriForum, Solidarity, and the IRR. Solidarity and AfriForum in particular, I want to zoom in on because they have this notion of community federalism, the idea of stop waiting for the state, stop waiting for daddy government or politician Zuma or politician Ramaphosa, Zenzele, do it for yourself. And in doing so, what can a community like, I don't know, I'm trying to think, sorry, let me take a step back. What can informal settlements, for instance, do in this regard? What can they do on the one hand, placing pressure on politicians, but on the other, actually having power? Your initial thoughts on this issue, because as Kanthan said, we've had this problem since 2008.
Yeah, essentially, I think that taking it from organizations like AfriForum and Solidarity, they started somewhere. Maybe they started with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. If I'm not mistaken, AfriForum started in 2010, and from there on, it grew to what it is now. I think that firstly, there has to be leaders in the community that care, that want the community to thrive, and it just starts with getting, just going from door to door. Even if you go to one door every single day, doesn't have to be all the doors. It doesn't have, just a step forward as to trying to solve the problem. And then after that, you get people who actually are knowledgeable, young people who can research, can do the work, and ultimately get the right information so as we can actually thrive. And because I think that it's easy to obviously speak to and refer to organizations like FU4, but as I said, they started somewhere, and these communities, there's already bad blood. I know if you go into these communities, there's always someone fighting with another person. So I think that it's a step. It's just taking steps, small steps, and then after that, trying to build a coalition between all um, everyone in the community. But yes, I think that it's time to become knowledgeable about the options that you have besides obviously relying on ESCOM, which is the inverter, which is the generator, and then after just pulling together all funds that you can within your community, so as to fix the issues that you're fighting, particularly in areas in old townships. In informal settlements, I think it's much more difficult, especially because the crime rate is high there. Not to say in townships and in suburbs it's not, but it's difficult to obviously put a battery onto a shack. But nonetheless, you can find you can try ways to obviously fix it. But ultimately, the point is just take one step in the right direction to take yourself off the grid. And also, collaborate with bigger organizations such as AfriForum. They know what they can. They know what to do. They know who to get in contact with. One of the people from the community can easily just approach AfriForum, and it's about obviously crossing racial lines. It's not about sticking into your corner. This is a situation that all South Africans are going to have to come together and fix ultimately, because the government is still trying to understand as to why there's no generation capacity, something they should have obviously realized 15 years ago. But at the same time, we as South Africans need to realize that our government is not going to do anything for us, and we're going to have to keep on, just working together. Whether it be a generator, whether it be inverter, whether it be solar, so be it. But I think that it's just that step into direction and trying to fix this issue together.
Even as you're saying this, and we'll conclude here, I've been very fascinated to see on various issues, electricity being one of them, the victor mindset versus the victim mindset. Here's a good example on the screen here. AfriForum starts power company. Here's an article about how AfriForum is effectively trying to form its own little company that can provide electricity and is already reaching out to entrepreneurs, guys who are doing this sort of thing, including companies that are innovating in the space with pebble bed modular reactors, which is actually technology South Africans pioneered, and we gave it up when it was under the state. But let's move beyond that. Kanthan, I'm going to come to you, and then I'm going to do one more round on this issue. But this story just exemplifies what we're talking about here. The idea that really South Africa is now going to become a society of patriots who say, I'm a victor and I want to do something, versus the victims who say, well, as was the case, for example, in the responses to this article, there goes white monopoly capital, there goes the beneficiaries of apartheid again. Exactly what are people trying to say here? Are these people trying to say they would rather sit in darkness so long as there is no AfriForum that gets involved in this issue? I fail to understand at times what black leftists, and yes, I'll say it that way, it's often black leftists, those leftists who trade on them being black and then asserting from that they have a more important voice than anybody else, who say this kind of nonsense.
Is that my cue to come in, Sishle? Look, can we just nail one thing down that consistently pisses me off? And I really want to grapple with this right now very firmly. Okay, it's this patronizing attitude where we assume that poor people don't have agency. Okay, can we just recognize that when I talk about these solutions, poor people more than anyone else, and I'm talking about people in townships, I'm talking about people in the likes of Diepsloot, and Diepsloot is a great example because Diepsloot is literally a place that has built itself up organically with zero help from the state at any level, and actually is a functional community. And go out there and measure, firstly, the number of things like satellite dishes. That's always a giveaway in terms of townships. Diepsloot is festooned with satellite dishes. Do the people who live in Diepsloot actually know load shedding schedules better than anyone else? Absolutely they do. Do they understand what is the cost of providing rudimentary battery backup? Absolutely they do. Do they know that they need to have all of their devices charged at particular times so that their connectivity is assured? Yes, they do. As soon as we end up in any discussion out here and we say, what about poor people who can't afford it? No, actually, the best thing that we can do is to put the money directly into the hands of those poor people, because trust me, they know how to spend that money better than anyone else does. And really, Sishle, I think for a long time, your slogan has been, what is it? Friends, family, faith, fellowship. I forget what the exact words were, but that is the point. Our responsibility right now is we cannot rely on the state to be providing anything for us. And it is up to us as individuals, first and foremost, to be providing for our families. Guys, can we just start there and stop waiting for the state to miraculously drop things down here? Now, throwing forward, because remember, we started off on the premise that we want something forward-looking in terms of where the country is going to go with this. Okay, I'm seeing a massive shift in terms of middle-class people going off-grid. Okay, and they're not going to be doing it by putting in a large amount of money up front. They're going to be doing it on a rent-to-own basis because the cost-benefit analysis now actually makes a huge amount of sense. If you've been paying 2,000 Rand a month to Eskom, you can now afford to go off-grid for that 2,000 Rand a month by paying it to a company that is now going to fund your solar infrastructure. So that is the starting point that we're going to do. Increasingly, we're going to be seeing people in the country taking responsibility for these things themselves. It's going to be the schools, it's going to be the churches, the hospitals. You know, my dad is currently in hospital getting treated for a lung infection. The entire rooftop of the hospital is festooned with solar panels. So they're off-grid. You go to the macro parking lot up the road from me here in Woodmead. Again, festooned with solar panels. We are all taking responsibility for our own stuff. Those of us who are going to sit back and wait for the state to be doing things for us, we are going to be left behind. Now, Sishla, you're probably aware of the fact that in townships around this country, there are private schools that are springing up. So there are teachers who are no longer prepared to work in part of the SATU-infested rat holes that we have that are called public schools. They are setting up their own schools. There are people in the townships who are scraping together 1,000 Rand a month per child to send their kids to school because they know that there's a teacher that is taking their money, that they are getting individual attention from. And it is a far better solution for their children to be getting that individual attention from a teacher that they are paying money for. So 2023, South Africa is going to see a collapse of the functional state at almost every conceivable level. But you know what? That is such a great thing, because the one thing that we are good at as South Africans is that we know how to make things work. All of us across the board. You know, I think we're very fond of saying a Boer marker plan, and it's true. But you know, all of us across the board, there is no racial divide in terms of resourcefulness in this country. And I think that we need to actually embrace that, push it, celebrate it, and that's going to be our saving as South Africa.
Absolutely. Let me add some potatoes to that meat dish that you're just dishing out here, Kanthan. You're absolutely spot on. There is a big distinction between the rhetoric of politicians who love to argue the state will do this, wait for politicians to deliver that, wait for government, blah, 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 versus the ordinary South African, the faith, flag, family, and freedom type South African who recognized a long time ago the state has failed. And actually, the private sector, which is often maligned as being white or white monopoly capital or evil capitalist, the sort of leftist rhetoric that dominates South Africa, the average South African recognizes actually, at a ground level, it is the private sector that comes to my aid. Those very private schools, Kanthan, that you're speaking about, which used to be, again, poisoned in the rhetoric of private schools are for whites and rich people, blah, blah, blah. There's a private school here in V Section Umlazi, my township that I stay in. There's no white kids at that private school. There are black kids at that private school, and quite a few of them from relatively poorer households than what you'd expect, for instance. I can go down the line in this regard to support the view, Kanthan, but I want to go around the room because we must move on. Dumo, the market always provides options. Kanthan has just rightly pointed this out. For a while, solar panels, inverters, and the like were actually quite prohibitive, but there are companies now, about Go Solar, for example, who say, listen, don't stress about buying this thing and that initial capital outlay of 100,000 Rand plus. Rent it for 1,500 upwards. The market.
Exactly, because I mean, I work in the private sector and we have these discussions. We have a product and we say, hey, you know, is this the right price? And then if it's too expensive, we're like, how do we make it more affordable? And this is these are the discussions that we have every day. Sometimes we'll fight over them. And sometimes it'll even become personal because we may disagree on how to provide a particular product to the market. But that's what we do, right? And that's just what people need to understand is that the people that are creating the products, they do their research and they will try to find ways to make these products much more accessible. Now, going back to that AfriForum thing and that whole small modular reactor, whatever that is, right? I'll just call it SMR. Now, imagine if the government just deregulated the electricity market. We would have been having power like there's no tomorrow. So we are actually creating these great solutions despite the heavy regulations. Just imagine if they were released. The market provides. And I think people should just get out of this mentality about, what about the poor? No. You know what? I'll just say it this way. Don't worry about the poor. Worry about yourself. The poor will figure it out. They are also individuals themselves, and they will look at the situation and they will make the right or make the correct action. And the people providing the products know that poor people, they're trying to get the biggest bang out of their bucks. And on top of that, they'll be competing with other people trying to get the same thing. So therefore, they are going to try and create a product that is accessible and also effective as well. So that's the reality. Government doesn't do that because, as Hopper stated, and this is just my last point on that, is that with monopolies, what happens is that you're going to pay more over time while the product becomes more inferior, right? That's the reality. And that's what we're seeing right now with Eskom and everything like that. So I'm glad that the market is actually providing these solutions. But once the shackles are gone, trust me, our living standards will go up and everything will be better. But yeah, I agree with you there, Sihle. Thanks.
Guys, as I strategically move us on here, but linked to what we're discussing here, and Nick, I'm going to come to you because really we've been saying this, and it's what I'm looking forward to in 2023, which is more private solutions to the problems we're facing. Crime is a massive issue that, if you remember last year, Nick, was top of mind for most South Africans as we had a very violent 2022, pardon me. The murder stats, for instance, being one crime category, which saw a sharp increase, even as a certain asshat of a police minister tried to pretend that he's on top of things. Clearly not. The private security industry in this country is really coming to the fore here and saying, look, whether you're poor or you're rich, here are the resources that we can actually pull together in lieu of the fact that we really don't have adequate visible policing. 2023, your view on crime and its effect specifically, Nick, on the electorate for 2024. Will it become a topical issue in an electoral sense?
I think on the last question, it's a little bit difficult to say because in a certain sense, I think even though things are getting worse now in terms of crime, South Africans have kind of been a little bit desensitized to this because there's just been so much violence in South Africa over the last few decades. But that being said, I do think it's part of the whole soup that's going to drive what I think is going to be quite an interesting election in 2024. I think it's going to be one of the things that really motivates people in the opposition to go out. And now that the ANC, its blood is very clearly in the water, I think that that's going to be something that pushes people there. With regards to the private security companies, sometimes I do wonder aloud how much that's the reason actually the country sort of hangs together nowadays. Because as we know, the SAPs are in a really, really bad state. And this is not just the view of political nerds. This is the view of most South Africans. I think something like 30% of South Africans say they have any sort of faith in the police. So it's not, everyone knows the problem, and everywhere you see, versions of private security setting up, the formal private security companies, community watchers, in some places, taxi organizations have essentially taken over security, and we saw that during the riots. But I think all of this is going to kind of, come together with a lot of the other crises to really, we are, I think, at a hinge moment. And not to steal the lines I had saved for later in the show, perhaps, I don't know whether I'm going to interfere with your structure here, but this is the year, I don't know, this sounds a bit ANC-ish, but it's the year of action. It's the year in which civil society and ordinary South Africans are going to turn around South Africa or not. We can embrace kind of mad socialism, racial division, that kind of nonsense. And then in 2029, it's going to be even harder to be a South African. Or this can be the year when, leading up to 2024, we campaign for the parties we like that are against socialism. We can support civil society organizations. We can free ourselves from the state where possible. We can change the ideas in which South African society is run so that we can begin to take the oppressive boot of the dysfunctional state off of everyone's necks, beginning in 2024, but not finishing there, because South Africa is going to be in a lot of trouble for quite a long time. But I think this is really the moment when a chance for political change is sitting in us. And it's up to every single one of us to take on that challenge and do everything we can within our power to effect some sort of change.
But yes, Nzuzo, I want to come to you because I think it's important to flesh this one out. Nick was a bit hesitant to put his neck on the block for this one. So I'll put it to you, Nzuzo. There's something to be said about a country, especially poorer communities, who are deeply scarred by the impact of violent crime in their communities, where, for instance, you have a police minister who sees his job as not being minister of police, but rather to be a minister of condolences, minister of commiseration, where he'll only rock up to an area in response to some sort of big incident that would have happened. Ever increasingly, I don't know if you've noticed this in Nzuzo, he's coming to communities that are actually that are giving him bat, that are basically saying, what are you doing here, bro? Like, why is it that you only rock up when you're here to make big speeches, to come with media with you, to flash your hat and to walk through our informal settlements, often with a massive army of soldiers around you, the very police officers who, when you leave, they leave with you. Let me be precise and specific. I covered in a Vuganazo episode a story of a gentleman in a rural village in Eastern Cape who was in hiding at the time because he chose with the community to stand up against a local gang of stock thieves. And that particular gang of stock thieves then proceeded to murder firstly his wife and seven of his relatives, pardon me. And, they're basically still looking for this man. It took the murder of these 8 people for Opeitele to then finally come out. And yes, as I said, when he came out, with all those police officers making all sorts of promises, as he had done in other places, whether it was the tavern in the Eastern Cape, the tavern in Johannesburg, you name it. A community, a country, Nzuzo, frustrated with crime, will this play out in our politics and the 2024 election?
I think yes. I think it will make a difference in how people vote. I'm still skeptical of actually people coming out to vote, in as much as this country is in a state of shambles and has failed entirely. I still believe that people will not turn to the polls as a way to change their reality. I think that most people will most likely, as Dumo says, will turn to the private sector and to themselves to try and find a way to rely on private entities to live, as opposed to going out there and voting for another party. Well, of course, you're always going to have those populists. You're always going to have people who make the headlines. Herman Mashawas and them, but. And as Nick says, South Africans are really desensitized to crime to an extent, and they've seen the value of, firstly, private security, but also community vigilante. They turn to that in terms of trying to impose security in their community. And look, I don't think, and I think that, with the state of the police, it has failed for so many years. I think since for the last two election cycles, 2014, 2019, securities, police were by then have failed. So, I really think that, that will not play out as much as I think load shedding will play out, will have a much more bigger impact in terms of how people vote. Security wise, I don't know. I think South Africans are more rely on themselves or each other as opposed to looking to the state for assistance, because I think it also goes back to apartheid times, colonial times, where you didn't have any sort of security in the form of policing, and you had to rely on each other. So yeah, I don't think that security policing is gonna or crime is gonna play that much of a big part in terms of how people vote. But I do think that there's going to be a lot of changes in the political sphere in terms of the ANC. I think that obviously they're going to go down 50, under 50, and there are going to be some surprises. I think that, there are going to be some coalitions in and around South Africa, KZN, Eastern Cape. I think down south there's going to be a lot of coalitions, people working together so that they can take the power away from the ANC. I don't know what the old Transvaal, the north side, but we'll see because, as we see in Northwest, it's in shambles. It's a state of failure, but somewhere or somehow they still vote for the ANC, which is weird. But you get what you vote for. So yeah, we'll see in the 2024 elections.
Well, Kanthan, let me come to you because this was going to be the next area that I wanted us to chat to, just to transition. That's why I use security and its effect on elections. Because, guys, let's be honest, 2023 is the year in which he who injects the greatest volume of ideas into our society will sway the direction of where people vote, either by A, persuading more people to vote for them, or B, to get the existing base out to shore up the electoral performance. This, of course, is where the ANC is very worried because the local government elections, the last elections, the local government elections, showed them that a large number of their own base is not coming out to vote for them. However, we still have that problem, Kanthan, of people who are eligible to vote, but still also don't come out to vote. So are we going to really see a massive shift in 2024? Who will be some of the loudest voices in campaigning in 2023?
Sishle, I think you've exactly nailed the problem that we have. Is the ANC support dwindling every single year? Absolutely, that is the case. But has there been a single entity, and I use entity meaning either a political leader or a political party, that has been able to capture the imagination of the masses to say that I will actually get up and go and vote? Because that is the problem that we have. So I have no doubt there's going to be a substantial shedding of losses of votes for the ANC. I don't see right now any of the other parties speaking a language that is going to persuade people who right now have no interest whatsoever in going out to vote that they should actually go out to vote. And I would like to think that there would be someone who would come up with exactly the type of ideas that you are talking about that are going to unite us, that are going to take us forward. The issue that I've got right now, and this on the basis of a person who has voted DA for a number of years, as a very specific example, but currently I do so just almost purely as a matter of not wanting to be the person who is wasting my vote. But I am not at any level actually inspired to do so. If I look at what Chris Pappas is doing out in Mgeni, I would actually be inspired. Now, that is a very specific, practical example of people actually going out and getting stuff done. And the question for me is, are we going to have any of the parties able to speak to that narrative and to stop getting distracted by things that people don't care about? Frankly, my view is we don't care about corruption as a nation anymore. Why? Because they are all corrupt. And it doesn't really matter if Jacob Zuma goes to jail, it's not going to turn the lights on. It doesn't really matter if Pravin Gordhan goes to jail, SAA is already lost, it's not going to fly. It doesn't matter if Fikile Mbalula goes to jail, our railroads have been shot to hell. Putting people in prison right now, yes, it is something that we need to be doing, but what the country needs is someone who's actually going to talk to the very practical issues of how do we actually, in a very short space of time, put in place very effective things that are going to take people forward. So a very specific example. I think all of us agree, right, that I'm bullish on solar and on going off grid in an individual capacity. Okay, I'm also very aware of the fact that we cannot run our country on solar. Okay, we actually need base load that's going to carry us forward. And I said we should sign those car power ship contracts. Why should we sign the car power ship contracts? Well, firstly, the landed cost per kilowatt of the electricity that we're getting from the car power ships is lower than what Eskom is currently paying to other providers. That makes it a good deal for us as a country. So I don't care if the car power ship guys are corrupt. What I care about is, are we getting in electricity at a lower price point than we are currently paying? And is it going to then bolster the grid so that people can go to work, so that the KFC down the road from me does not shut down because of the fact that they're not able to keep their fridges running and they have to throw away stuff? This is happening. We are shedding jobs at a phenomenal level, and we are arguing back and forth as to whether we need solar, whether we need wind. No, we need electricity. That is what we need as the most fundamental starting point to start building this nation. We need to stop talking about regime change in Zimbabwe. It is not our friggin' problem. Let the Zimbabweans sort that stuff out for themselves. It is not for us to start talking about Putin's war in Ukraine. Frankly, I don't give a shit. Okay? Whether Putin wins or whether Ukraine wins, my children are not going to be better off either way. That's all I'm concerned about. What am I going to be able to do? And that's what all of us as South Africans should be focused on. What are we doing for our families, for our children to be able to go forward? And I don't see a political party right now that's speaking that language. I want Jordan Hill-Lewis to actually shut the fuck up about talking about what's going on in Ukraine. I want to see, so Papas is now wanting to take, is writing a strongly worded to Eskom saying we disapprove of your wanting to give us an increase. No, I'm saying, Papas, what you should be doing, okay, you've now got the tailwind, my man, and what you should be doing is going out there and saying, right, now as a municipality, we want to know which providers out there are going to give us electricity at a lower price point than Eskom is currently charging us, and that's what we're going to roll out to our communities. And I want to see every single municipality that's not under ANC control doing exactly that. And they shouldn't care in terms of whether it is gas, because frankly, right now, putting in a gas turbine is the quickest way to give yourself a 500 megawatt baseload, really. And remember that a lot of the issues that we've got with Eskom right now is that we are burning diesel in what are essentially gas turbines. Frankly, the quickest thing that we should be doing is getting gas from Mozambique piped directly across to those power stations that are currently burning diesel, burning gas instead. We're immediately reducing our costs. Okay, we're reducing the wear and tear on our roads and the sheer volume of trucks that are shipping coal back and forth. There are just so many solutions, but no one's talking about it. Everyone's talking about just how friggin' corrupt the ANC is. Yeah, I could go on for ages, but I think you understand where I'm going to.
No, and I'm on board with a lot of this, because I think, Dumo, even as you listen to this, there's two nested features in what Kanthan said that need to be unpacked. Number one, and I haven't forgotten the original question here, of who will be the loudest voice in 2023 insofar as persuading people to come out to vote for them, because that would determine 2024. But these issues that Kanthan is bringing out is important, because being the loudest voice must also come with saying the things that people need to hear, not want to hear, need to hear, which is hard solutions to problems which have been with us for a while. You need that liberty champion, Dumo, to come out and say, you know what, I'm sorry, but the free ride, the free lunch myth is exactly that. It doesn't exist. What we need to do is put our shoulders to the wheel, work in this direction, yada, yada, yada. But I don't want to convolute my question. I want to keep it simple and based on Kanthan. The guy who comes up with easy solutions and says, let's do this, dear South Africans. Vote in my way and these things happen. Let's scrap certain pieces of legislation that's preventing those easy solutions that Kanthan speaks about. Why does Eskom, for example, not have a license to buy diesel directly, just as an example, as one example? Why aren't we exploiting gas, Kanthan is speaking about, from our neighbors in Mozambique, especially because we're spending military resources to provide security there? we should be demanding something in return for that. These sort of solutions, Dumo, and beyond that, these must impact on 2024.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. I think what people just need to understand, I mean, if you look at the DA, and now people are going to come around and say, now people may criticize me and say, oh, you're just saying that because ZACP never got a seat in parliament. But I don't care.
Go for it.
All right, I'm going to say it. The problem with our democratic system today is that a lot of the politicians think that being charismatic is the way to go. That's why you see that, a lot of politicians are writing letters to government saying this is unacceptable and so forth. But the people that can't make it in politics are the people that are actually providing the solutions. So I think that's what's going to happen. That's what's happening right now. So now this is the thing about the DA. I've never heard anyone in the DA say we need to scrap Eskom's monopoly. They don't even say it. That's what concerns me. It's one thing to say it and not deliver, because that's what politicians do. But they're not even questioning the monopoly of Eskom and everything like that. And that worries me, because it seems to me that if they ever, benefit from the ANC losing 50%, they are probably just going to keep things the way they are. They probably see it as, hey, maybe I can benefit, maybe we can benefit the same way that these cadres are benefiting from Eskom right now, which is why they're not coming up with the radical solutions. So I just think, in my opinion, that where South Africa might be headed is like somewhere in the direction of like a private law society where the government becomes less and less relevant, public property decreases in size, and people actually start to take matters into their own hands, like providing security for themselves, electricity, and so forth. Now, how will that affect the 2024 election? I think what will happen is that voter turnout may be lower than in 2019. I think people are starting to develop a lot of apathy and say it doesn't work. Voting doesn't work. They're and again, when I was running with the ZACP, there were a lot of people that had apathy, and they said to me, Dumo, yeah, I vote for you guys, right? But there's so much of the status quo that's going on within Parliament that you guys may be ineffective anyway. So even if I do vote for you, what happens? Like, you guys need to get 100% for things to work. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize that slowly and saying, you know what? I am better off investing my time and energy into making myself more self-reliant and putting myself in a community that's like-minded and that can provide education for children, power, security, and everything like that. They're starting to see that, and I think as a result, they're not going to vote. And, I've had people close to me just losing hope in this and saying, you know what, Dumo? And again, I'm not saying people should not vote. I'm just saying people are starting to see that voting is probably ineffective. And I think that's going to affect 2024. Voter turnout may be lower than expected. And that's really going to really change the country. For better or worse, I'm not sure, but I think it's mainly for the better. That's what I think.
Guys, as we begin to taper off our conversation, we really are in the last 15 minutes of the show. I did say it would end at about 10 past or so. I think it's important. Actually, before I think anything is important, welcome to it. We're in the last 15 minutes of the show. If you've just joined us, shame, sorry, man. But you can always watch the recording of this. But even as you do that, make sure, please, you do me a solid favor. Hit the like button here on the show. Easy peasy, whether you're watching the simulcast, Facebook, YouTube, or on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. Make sure you hit that like button, please. And, of course, subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube in particular. This is Liberty and Friends. We have, of course, a full house, as usual, with Dumo Denga, the host of the ManPatria show, Nicolas Lorimer, of course, who is with the Two Crickets in a Thorn Tree podcast and the Daily Friend. Find them, please, at dailyfriend.co.za. Nzuzo Kathi, there he is. He's one part of that three-legged pointy pot that is the ManPatria podcast, Nzuzo Kathi. And, of course, Kanthan Pillay, columnist, writer, and media guru, as I like to refer to him on all things media-related. Make sure, please, you shout out to him. He has a website. I just forgotten it. I'll give him a chance to punch it at the end of the show. Welcome to it. This is Liberty and Friends. Nick, and then Nzuzo. Guys, even as I'm saying this, actually, let me go to Nzuzo first. Nzuzo, I'm going to ask you to forecast. Who's going to be the loudest voices in 2023 insofar as the jostling in the run-up to next year's election? What are you seeing in your crystal ball? Who do you trust? I want this to be a little personal. Who do you trust with that? Where we began the show, I said there's a fork in the road. Who do you trust to taking us down the right side, if you will? Excuse the pun, especially because I'm always called a right winger on the show. But who do you trust us to trust? Pardon me, we're taking us down that correct path, if you will. And what does 2024 look like for you?
I trust myself, CK. Like I'm the only
Let's
person
go.
that really can dictate and dictate where my life goes. I don't put my trust and all my agency in someone else. Look, man, when I look at the political parties, they're the same. They're the same since 2019. They make the same type of noise, the same type of rhetoric. I haven't necessarily seen something different. I think most parties will grow an inch a bit, but it's not going to be a dent in the previous results of 2019. Everyone obviously has their hopes on newcomers such as Action. They say, "Hey, man, they can do a lot, but I don't necessarily think they're going to make a dent in the voting patterns of South Africa." I think it's only us that can really dictate as to where we go. I think that most that voice that you so want, Sihle, that you so yearn for, I don't think it will come from the political sphere. I think it will come from business. I think it will come from civil society. It will come from that guy, similar to Operation Tudula, but not in the same not exactly the same, but in any event, like even if it doesn't come for those types of people, it will not come from any political party. I don't think there's going to be a political party that's going to sway South Africans, because South Africans themselves at their most fundamental level are different. I don't think we can all sure when the going gets tough, you're gonna look at your neighbor and be like, "Hey, bro, let's work together. Let's do X, Y, and Z." But if because ultimately, if we're actually so serious about trying to make a change, we would have done uprisings for days. We would be doing uprisings for days, come together, protest, shutdowns, you name it. But most people are like, either I need to go work, or I need to go hustle on the streets, or I need to go to school, whatever it may be, whatever is the most easiest and most direct thing for you to do to further your life, people are gonna keep on doing, and it's gonna be dictated by their families. So if you have a party that's easy, and I see people also saying Cape Independence, I think that's going to remain as it is. It's just going to be a party obviously on the sidelines, but I don't think it's going to get to a point unless there's somebody who obviously has an organization which spurs it on in differently to what has now been the case now. But I don't think anything's going to happen in that regard as well. So I think that most South Africans are going to rely on themselves, because it's always been like that, to be honest, particularly in the in black communities, and it's going to be like that for the foreseeable future. The DA is doing the same thing as they always been doing. Obviously, look at us, guys. We're doing everything right, but what about your policies? Your policies are shaky. Your policies really still put power in the government's hands. And then after, you're gonna have obviously the people who are gonna use the race card. But that's just that's just the second leg of their argument. Then you're gonna have people like the IFP. I've been pissed at the IFP for 15 years. I don't know why they're not making noise. They're not doing anything. You know, they just like they're shooting blanks. Like, it's really annoying as to how um, um, they just sit in the sidelines and try to just um, work together with other parties. They must take the lead, particularly in KZN, but also across the country. And then after Action SA, we still yet to hear about rate policies. They say they're having the policies at policy conference in the middle of the year. We'll see what they say. But I can't rely on Herman Ashaba, because ultimately I don't know what that who butters that guy's bread. To be honest, he says one thing, he says another thing. It's difficult to really see the wood from the trees, and we'll see. And other parties. Obviously, the EFF are a non-starter. We don't care about them. They're always going to be trying to be the violent people, and it looks like they've also internalized their identity as those people who are going to come out in the racial incident, or they're gonna use violence as a means to get what they want. I think they've internalized and they know that that's their identity. But political party, I don't think anyone. I think most South Africans are like, hell no, you're not gonna bring any type of difference in terms of us. But anyway, yeah, that's what I think, man.
And guys, I'm going to pop the same question to everybody, where, as I said at the beginning, fork in the road, 2023, fork in the road. As we head to 2024, who do you see as your either a preferred party, preferred leader, or preferred community-based initiative, for example, the independence movement? So just hold that, please, as I go to Nick with this particular question. This is going to be our final question for the evening, guys. But Nick, as I pepper you with this question, I'm going to throw in this issue of Cape independence and really Zulu independence also, because that's a rising voice, one which I don't want to say too much now, but I've been roped into by very, very senior Zulu leadership in this particular province. Indeed, we're holding a meeting on the 28th on this particular regard, and something may very well be announced on it. It is a voice, a lobby group, let me call it that. As to whether it's super influential, that's another issue for another day, and I'm also quite realistic about that. But it's a voice that exists. Fork in the road, who do you see being some of the loudest and influential voices, including your preferred voices?
Well, I think my preferred voice, and this is going to sound like schmaltzy crap, but it's true, is the South African people. IRR surveys time and time again show that people are actually pretty moderate, pretty okay with people of different races. They don't want hardcore socialism running their lives, that kind of thing. And really, I think that 2023 will be a year that many South Africans who have not been involved in politics because they think all the parties are the same, or they think, the ANC is so big, they're going to win forever. There's no point in challenging them ever. I think we're going to see probably a lot more action from South Africans in general. And that means you're going to see more people coming out to support all the opposition parties. You're going to see people starting new political parties. I reckon there's going to be a whole bunch of ones, some good, some crazy, before 2024. And I also think that South Africans are going to make plans to deal with the situation that we're in currently. Which way we're going down that fork in the road, it's definitely too early to say. I think that it really does. That was kind of my point earlier. This is, it really does depend on us to make sure, those of us who like liberty, to make sure that it goes down the right path. Because if we don't work, the other side, the sort of EFF types, are out there spending every minute of every day trying to drag us into the kind of hell state of Venezuela or Zimbabwe. You can pick your example. And if we don't push back, if we just say, there's no point, they will win. And so it will be up to us to decide which road we go down. It's too early to say, though, for sure, but I'm optimistic that South Africans, because they are generally speaking a sensible lot, will choose the right road.
Kanthan, I'll throw it to you. Dumo, you'll have the last word then. But Kanthan, fork in the road. It really can.
Look very quickly. I'll throw ahead to a best case scenario as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. Okay, the best case scenario for me is that you need a change of leadership in the DA as starting point, number one. Okay, and I say this on the basis that if you look back through the history of first the Democratic Party and then the Democratic Alliance, you can look at the likes of a Tony Leon, and you can think Tony Leon, leader of the opposition. Tony Leon looks presidential. You might disagree with the guy completely, and there's a lot of what Tony says that I utterly loathe. Okay, but you cannot deny that the guy has that X factor. Okay, you can look at Helen Zille. You can say Helen Zille, leader of the opposition. Helen Zille looks presidential. Helen Zille gets stuff done. You cannot say that about John Steenhuisen. I don't care. okay, how well he argues and debates in Parliament, that the dude is not presidential. He lacks the ability to actually rally people around. And frankly, I'm very happy to have a Lula type scenario where Helen comes back and leads the party for the next election. Because remember, more black people voted for Helen Zille than voted for Musi Maimane. We mustn't forget this. All right. So that's the first piece that I think is crucial. The second piece, okay, is that we have three other parties that actually share a lot of core values with the DA. Okay, the three parties are the Freedom Front Plus, the ACDP, and the IFP. Okay, now what really needs to happen is that, to my mind, those four parties need to be sitting down and saying, all right, we have these points of divergence. Okay, because I'm never going to agree with the ACDP on capital punishment. I'm never going to agree with the ACDP on gay rights, because I'm fervently in favor of gay rights. I'm never going to agree with the ACDP around reproductive rights, because I'm firmly in favor of that. But there are all of these other things that we do agree upon, as the DA, as the IFP, as the ACDP, as the Freedom Front Plus. And can we actually now build a base that is built on what we agree upon that is good for all South Africans? And can we then map out a platform where we agree as these four parties? Then I think that we have the possibility, because then we are coming together on a common platform that's talking about we providing services, we are providing education, we are providing security, everything that all of us across the board agree on that we need as South Africans. And if we can actually get to that point, and that actually requires shelving of egos and hard discussions behind the scenes. And look, the thing is, Zille has actually pulled this stuff off before, because she pulled off an impossible coalition in Cape Town back in the day. Unless we can get to that point, and there has to be a leader right now who is going to be able to step forward. And frankly, I do not see anyone with that type of charisma right now who's actually going to persuade people, I'm going to get up and go to the polls. Okay, the one thing you must say about Lula and Bolsonaro, no matter how much you might hate or love their particular positions, they both have that ability to pull the crowds and get them to the friggin' polls. And we need to have leaders who are capable of doing that. And guys, right now, I'm not seeing that happening. And so, Helen, if you want to come back, I'm all in favor of that.
Careful with that, because I know Helen does watch the show on occasion. I'll be getting an SMS shortly enough. Dumo, I must come to you, and I'm going to add one little thing I want you to chew on before I wrap this up. Same question, Baba. We're at that fork in the road. Nicolas says it's too early to tell. Nzuzo has his take. Kanthan has his take. But I have to say what I always say. It is he who injects the greatest volume of ideas into a society that is at a point of crisis, who will sway that society one way or the other. Nicolas is spot on when he says that the EFF is on the ground. Those red, I'm trying to use clean language here. Those commies are on the ground, persuading South Africans, even against their own interests, to vote for that commie nonsense. Where are the libertarian, classically liberal, liberty-orientated, or even just conservative-orientated individuals doing the same?
Yeah, I'm going to say something pretty controversial.
Here we go. Here comes the deep water.
I think that people should not care about the next elections. I think that if a politician tells you that you should come and vote for us, don't listen to them. Don't, how can I say it? Hear them, but don't listen to them. That's how I'd put it, right? Don't worry about these guys. These guys, when you vote them in, they're going to go to parliament, change a lot of laws that are going to make your life incredibly difficult. And you won't even have a say on that. They're going to have the last word, okay? So we need to just understand that. These guys, they only need you for your votes. Now, what can you do as an individual? You can speak to people. You can form partnerships. You can start stokvels and stuff like that. already we've seen with the electricity crisis right now, you can actually make your lives much easier by actually approaching the right people and getting and actually forming a community. So I just think with politicians, don't trust them, hear what they have to say, and that's the way to go forward. And now, with the fork in the road situation, I think what will happen is that, the politicians will be more active, because I think there is this thing going around that the ANC is going to get below 50%. So a lot of these parties are thinking of strategies to try and see if they can get into a coalition or get as many votes as possible. But I think their biggest barrier is going to be apathy from people. And as Kanthan said, there probably isn't anyone that's going to make anyone say, yeah, I'm going to go out, get up and vote. I think people's lives have reached that point now where it's like, look, I need to do something else. I got a kid, and my kid needs to do their homework. And in order for me to have my kid do my homework, or their homework, is that they need electricity. How do I have constant electricity? Those are going to be on the top. Those are going to be the top thoughts on people's minds. And I think they realize that a political solution is very unlikely. But getting something done with the community, even though it is very difficult, it's not an easy thing, but they can get results from that. So I think that's going to be the main theme of 2024. And the voter turnout will really tell you, if people care about the government in this country. And I think I could be wrong here, but I think it's just heading in the direction where people are becoming, they're developing more apathy. I'll put it that way.
Guys, we're out of time. I'm going to do one more round just for people to share. How do we get in touch with you? And how do we find you on social media? Kanthan, how do the folks find you? What's your website again? I know you said you're trying to commit to writing regularly.
KanthanPillay.com. It's quick and easy. I haven't written this year yet. You'll find me on Twitter at Kanthan Pillay. You'll find me on Gab at Kanthan Pillay. You will find me on Parler at Kanthan Pillay. I'm pretty much on almost every platform, but I'm probably on Twitter more than any other spaces. If you want to get hold of me directly, my DMs are open on Twitter. So that's the easiest way to get hold of me.
Hey, tada. That is Kanthan Pillay, of course. Pranik, how do the folks get in touch with you?
Best place, Daily Friend Show. It's every Monday to Thursday. Goes live at on YouTube at 1:30, and then it's on audio by about 4:30. Just pop to the comments and shout at me there. It's probably the best place to get hold of me.
I was about to say, I've been saying 1 o'clock this whole week. My bad. 1:30, guys. Daily Friend. Today. Make sure you find them on YouTube. That is with Nicolas, Lorimer. But Nzuzo, how do the folks find you on your social media, Baba?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, Nzuzo Kathi, as well as Instagram. I will reply to you guys' Twitter DMs. And yes, and as well as on ManPatria. But yeah, thank you for having me on the show, man.
Shap Razo. And of course, Dumo, last but not least, for you too, Baba. How did the folks find ManPatria? And what was on the show on Saturday?
So if you want to find ManPatria, it's on our website, manpatria.com. We're also on Twitter as well. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at Dumo Denga. And again, guys, so what was on the last episode, I spoke about the state creating laws that favor themselves and why you should always expect that. And I also wrote a piece on just how South Africa can end load shedding for good. It's also on the website as well.
Absolutely. That is, of course, the ManPatria fellas. Make sure you catch them. And Dumo, Nzuzo Kathi, and of course, Koketso Resane. Bro, thanks a lot. And thank you for having watched this, another installment, or the first installment rather, of Liberty and Friends. Guys, please understand something. 2023, there's a reason why I framed the title the way I did. We are literally at that fork in the road. And 2023, for the Big Daddy Liberty brand and show, is going to be a very big year. Please expect big things. I've been talking about this last year for a while. We're ready now. We are ready, goodness me. February is a big month. I'll be meeting with organizations who will be supporting and working with me in this regard. We are going to hit the road. We're going to look like a political campaign. I am going to be pushing the liberty ideas as and where I travel. It'll be leaflet drops, it'll be public meetings, it'll be door to door. We're literally looking to hit the road and talk to you, injecting the liberty ideas that we often talk about on the show. So we're going to have that ground wall, if you will, so you can be a part of that. So please look out for the website. There'll be more information. We're doing our final planning in the month of February, as I said. So expect to hear a big launch of this thing in March, and hopefully it'll have the support that it needs from various organizations who you'll know, of course, I spoke to last week on the show. So please, guys, your prayers are very much invited in this regard. I'm looking to make this a very big year for BDL as a project, especially reaching people with our ideas. So please support the work. Whenever I say visit that website, pardon me, excuse me. Whenever I say visit that website at bigdaddyliberty.com, find a payment method, contribute 100 Rand a month. It's not money to buy bubblegum or whatever. It's money to literally put diesel in Ufasimba, my baki, to print rather the leaflets and all the content, to put together t-shirts and stuff. There's so much we're busy with in the background at the moment. So please consider becoming a part of that BDL club. More information on this. We're going to formalize it nicely in the month of February, and we'll make that announcement in March as we relaunch. Guys, big, exciting stuff, and you will be a part of it. Now, with that being said, thank you so much for watching. As always, I'm so grateful to have you guys here. Hit that like button on your way out, and yeah, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. And again, as I always say, at the end of any show, never trust a commie.